The following is a presentation from the MJCast, the internet's premier podcast on all things Michael Jackson.
I'm a Black American. I am proud of who I am.
Together, we can make a change in the world. I want to see you!
I like to take sounds and put them under the microscope.
There's a driving bass, you become the bass. Let the music write itself.
I don't sing it if I don't mean it.
Welcome to the MJCast, your source of news, discussion, and interviews on the King of Pop. Hello and welcome to the MJCast. Darryl Phinnessee is a singer-songwriter whose work is known by people all around the world, perhaps without them even knowing it, because he wrote the iconic theme song for one of the most successful sitcoms of all time, Frasier. The song had him nominated for an Emmy Award. That's far from his only plaudit. A Grammy-winning singer, he is one of the American music industry's most in-demand session and touring vocalists. He has worked with Quincy Jones, spent 7 seasons on one of America's most popular TV shows, Dancing with the Stars, and recorded with artists like Stevie Wonder and Whitney Houston. He has also toured with Don Henley, Rod Stewart, and Lionel Richie. But Darryl is joining us on the MJCast today because he also had a very long association with the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. He accompanied Michael on all 3 of his solo tours, Bad, Dangerous, and History, providing backing vocals, but also joining Michael on center stage, with featured spots during I'll Be There and Black or White. Being a fixture in Michael's touring band meant he helped make history. He was on stage for Michael's record-breaking HBO pay-per-view concert live in Bucharest 1992, and for his game-changing 1993 Super Bowl performance. He remained a go-to collaborator for Michael right up to the end of his life. In 2009, Darryl was one of the few fixtures from previous tours to have been kept on the planned This Is It residency in London. We're delighted Darryl is joining us today to share his memories and thoughts about the years he spent working with the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. Darryl, welcome to the MJCast.
Oh, thank you. That was a full introduction. Glad to be here, Jamon.
You are somebody who's worked so extensively with Michael on such a broad range of tours and performances, and I just feel really blessed and lucky that we're able to chat.
I am too.
So one of the things we like to do with our guests is to go back in time, really back to the start, to talk about your childhood, where you grew up, your family, and how you got into the industry. Would you be able to take us back to those times?
Okay, well, my parents are Charles and Frances, wonderful folks who I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, and a lot of folks in the community called my mother and father Aunt Frances and Uncle Charles. I mean, that's how beloved they were in the community, and not just relatives. My mother was a school teacher, so many people knew her from that. And my father worked his way up through the ranks and became an engineer at Chrysler Corporation. I went to Catholic school, became a choir boy in 5th grade. There was a choice between altar boy practice and choir boy practice. And I always wanted to be an altar boy, but when there was the clash between the two, there's definitely chose to be a choir boy. So I sang in church. I also started and was a member of a couple of groups, singing groups when I was young. I think I started maybe around 8, 9 years old, being in a singing group. I had met this guy named Charles Clark. I saw him and some other kids singing, and I was just really fascinated with that. They were just singing a cappella, singing harmonies on the porch. And I went over and introduced myself and met them. And fast forward a little bit, we started a group called the Deltones. And we were one of the most popular groups in East St. Louis when I was growing up. We won quite a few talent shows. We performed around the city a lot. Later, when I went to college, I started a group called Reel to Reel. And we were a big band, kind of an Earth, Wind, and Fire sized band with horns, rhythm section, 4 singers. And we were, if not the most popular bands in Southern Illinois at my college and in the surrounding area. People knew us, and so we played all the fraternities and sororities and nightclubs in that area. Then I moved out to LA. I got my degree in music education, in voice, classical music. So I moved out here, and I got my teaching certificate so that I could teach. while I was looking to start to seek my fortune, as they say, start to get studio work or, I wanted to become a recording artist in my own right and do a solo thing. So
Right.
that's what I started. But one thing led to another. I started doing recording sessions and I became in demand doing that because that's always been easy for me, singing and arranging harmonies and putting that kind of thing together. So I quickly became very much in demand and in short order, kind of became one of the top session singers in town. I mean, doing all of the kind of work that session singers do in Los Angeles, movies, television, records of all different genres, performing live, going on tours. The audition came up with Michael, and because I was one of the top session singers in town, I was one of the names that would come up, to be considered to go on tour with Michael. I'd actually worked with him once before that audition happened to go on tour, and that was actually about a mile away from my house. I rode my bike to the recording session. I did some pre-recording for the Victory Tour. There are some creatures called cretons, so I guess some giant tree-like creatures
Yeah.
on the Victory Tour, and I was one of the singing voices for them. So that's when I first met Michael. If you're anybody that lives anywhere, unless off the planet, you know who Michael Jackson is, and you've been seeing him all your life. So to walk into a studio and all of a sudden there's Michael Jackson, right? Unadorned and just kind of dressed normally, and he was running the session. So first of all, just kind of surreal just to meet him. Even though I worked with a lot of people, still he's Michael Jackson, and he's just a sweet guy, and he gave us directions about what he wanted to do. And again, Michael is always kind of, I think a good way of saying is kind but firm. He knows what he wants. He tells you what he wants. And he was good producing those vocals.
Right.
And I remember especially liking that he was producing the vocals because he's a singer. And I know that he sings all of his parts on his stuff. So I knew that he was going to give us good direction as a singer. Sometimes you got a keyboard player or, somebody plays some other instrument that's the producer. And they're musical, but a singer knows a singer best, and he was producing the vocals. So I liked that. And then we took pictures with him afterwards, and he was sweet. And it was a pleasant experience.
Did you ever get to work with Michael in the studio any other time, like for any records, or was your relationship with him strictly live tours?
We did some pre-recording for Heartbreak Hotel at his house in Encino, in his studio.
Wow. Okay.
So do when he's behind the screen making those moves.
Right.
So we did those. That and the other was "We Are Here to Change the World" that for Captain EO.
Right. Yeah. Love that song.
I recorded.
That was John Barnes, wasn't it?
I recorded on that. Right. I recorded on that. Michael wasn't there.
Okay.
So the only time I recorded with Michael in the studio was when we did that at the Heartbreak Hotel. At his place in Encino.
And he repurposed that, didn't he, for The Way You Make Me Feel in his later tours. On the 30th anniversary concert in New York City, I think that part was used leading into The Way You Make Me Feel.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask about your thoughts on Michael's music and his brother's music as you were growing up. How much of a Jackson 5 fan were you, and what were some of your favorite records from the family or from Michael before that Victory era of when you got to work with him?
Oh, well, right off the bat, the first record I heard from the Jackson 5 was a big hit in East St. Louis. It was called Big Boy. This is before they even went to Motown. Michael sang the lead. And then, of course, there's the Jackson 5. And I think it kind of goes without saying, everybody across the nation and across the world were infatuated with the Jackson 5, And so as a singer and being in singing groups, we did some Jackson 5 songs. I even sang I Found That Girl, which was kind of foreshadowing that I was going to later be singing, I'll Be There with Michael. I sang Jermaine's I Found That Girl, which was a big hit for our band. But no, I love the Jackson 5 and their sound and their performance. And yeah, like I said, like everyone else, I was, they were great. I loved the Jackson 5,
And as they moved in through the 70s and started producing their own work, Can You Feel It and those kind of songs, and from the Triumph album and the Destiny album, Blame It on the Boogie and Shake Your Body and that kind of music, were you enjoying that as much as you did the earlier Jackson 5 stuff?
Certain songs, I'm picky about the music that I like, so I don't like every song that any artist make, but a large majority of the things that the Jacksons did, I liked.
When we get into that early 80s era, Thriller's coming out, just walk us through again how you got involved in that. Did you have to sort of audition or sign up or apply to be on that?
Yeah, the studio was Evergreen Studios. That's like,
Mhm.
literally less than a mile from my house. And usually stuff that's, striking distance right here in Burbank, I just ride my bike, like to the grocery store and errands and stuff. So yeah, I rode my bike down there. Before that, I'd forgotten to mention Tom Baylor and Quincy Jones
Mhm.
were looking to put a group together that would be something like R&B jazz influenced, right?
Yeah.
And I auditioned for that and got that with Saida Garrett, myself, Kevin Dorsey, and David Swanson. We were the ones picked. They were holding auditions all over the country, and we were the four that got picked to be in that group with Quincy Jones. And so that began my close affiliation with Quincy.
Yeah.
But I was also on that list of people that would get called to audition for stuff. So it's kind of, I guess, a double whammy. Since I had done stuff with Quincy and I was one of the most popular singers, then I got called. My name was in the bag to get called for those auditions. They were putting us together in groups to audition.
Right.
And not necessarily groups that we would have chosen ourselves. Ordinarily you get called for a session. Well, it happens both ways. You get kind of, producer will pick people and you sing together, but more often than not they'll pick one or two people and ask those people to get the other folks because they know that who you want to sing with the most or sing with the best. Anyway, I auditioned with three other people. One was a girl. She was kind of exotic, but she had only kind of done, I think, like some Broadway stuff, and she really didn't know how to sing harmonies. So it was a couple of other guys. When they auditioned us, I felt, just be honest, I felt like the band was playing a little too loud, to how they're going to hear us, but that's a common singer's complaint, the band's playing too loud. They ran us through 3-4 songs, then it was on to the next group that they were auditioning. Nelson Hayes, who was assistant tour manager, and also kind of the liaison for Michael, he was the one that was taping the auditions. He came afterwards and said, hey, okay, well, they're going to put you guys on hold and we'll let you know something. That same week, I had also auditioned for the Dolly Parton show. It was going to be a variety show. It was going to be primetime television on every week. And the four singers were going to be like doing not only singing with Dolly, but doing different skits and stuff in this, it's like a variety show, kind of comedy and variety show. So we'd be doing skits, like doing some acting and some singing. I mean, just an excellent opportunity. I really hated it. Both of these opportunities came at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
But my heart was, when I thought about it, my heart was more in, going on tour with Michael.
Yeah.
But, you do all of this work to get called and get the people to know your name and know who you are so you can get called for recording sessions. Well, this thing with Dolly Parton really was an excellent opportunity because I would still be in town. At that time, I was probably doing sometimes as many as four sessions a day.
Wow.
So to leave town for a year on a tour was actually scary to me. It's like, whoa, who's going to be Darryl Phinnessee for this year? I've been gone. Who's going to be all those gigs I was getting called for? Who is going to be the person that gets called for that? And are they going to forget me a year later, right? I was used to working with a lot of people. All of a sudden, I'm going to leave town with one person. But I thought about it. I said, I mean, the fact that I was afraid to do it was actually the deciding point in the end, because I kind of took an honest look at it and went, okay, either I'm going to make a decision out of love or out of fear. To stay here would be making a decision out of fear. That'd be the practical decision. I'm getting called all the time for jobs. I'm going to be on television every week, plus still getting called for all those jobs. And still opening up my opportunities to work with a lot of people, which can eventually, hopefully, lead to getting my own record deal, right? Working with all those different producers and stuff from record companies and movies companies. Or I could leave town with one person. And this was a time in my life where sometimes I didn't go on vacations because I didn't want to leave town for too long. Right. So when I realized I was really afraid to leave town, but also at the same time knowing that, wow, a couple of things that I want to do most in my life are travel and perform. And here's like the best of that.
Mm.
I mean, the absolute best of that, traveling at the highest level and performing at the highest level, with an artist that I admire. I decided if I made the decision out of fear, I looked at it like it's a crossroads. If I make that decision out of fear, I'm setting myself up to then now this is who I am. I'm making decisions out of fear going down the line. Or I'm going to take this chance and make a decision out of love. And now I'm going to become that. Well, that's who I wanted to be. I know it kind of sounds absurd to people after the fact now. Whoa, you were like hesitating about going on a world tour with Michael Jackson. But if you weigh, the practicality of what I was already doing, I was already working with, just several. I've sung on more than 100 albums, television shows, movies. Again, like I said, at times I was doing 4 sessions a day. I have such a body of work. And basically, it's like leaving all of that opportunity to work with one person.
Yeah.
But that's what my heart wanted to do. That was going to be the fun thing to do, So I decided that.
We often hear that from collaborators, especially people that worked in the studio with Michael, music producers. Often they would have to give up working with lots and lots of different artists to sort of be locked away in a studio for 6 months, a year or more, working on Michael's material, not knowing whether that material would ever come out. Famously, Brian Loren, who was a music producer who worked on the Dangerous album, was like that. He spent, I think, a year or more working on Dangerous, and none of his songs ever even made it on the album. So I think that is definitely a common thing we hear from people is we do really want to work with Michael, but also that's a huge time commitment during my career.
Right. You know what? Now, and let me go back because I left something out. So because I had auditioned for Dolly Parton show and got that,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually putting them on hold while I was going to audition for Michael. So I kind of felt bad about that. I called Nelson and I said, Nelson, I'm not trying to be pushy or anything, but I've already auditioned for a Dolly Parton show and gotten that gig. And I've asked them politely, could they wait a couple of days because I was auditioning to go on tour with Michael. And before I gave them my decision. And I said, I don't want to be rude and stretch that out too long. And he actually told me, this to give you an idea of how practical most people would be thinking about it. He was saying, man, you should take that. You got a sure thing. He says, Michael kind of doesn't know what he wants. And then he kind of changed that. Well, it's not that he doesn't know what he wants. What he wants is a group that's been together. And he named the Modernaires, which were like Elvis Presley's singing guys.
Right.
And the first thing that came to my mind is, why doesn't he get the Waters in? They not only have sang on some of his stuff, but they're a group. They're a family. They're 4 singers. He said, well, we wanted somebody younger or newer. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, and I was about to hang up because it was really frustrating. If you can imagine, these are 2 excellent opportunities coming along at the same time. So I was about to hang up, and then I said, well, it's not that he wants people that have been singing together, because if I put a group together, you're going to think we've been singing together forever because I'm going to put people together that know how to sing together.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really saying that kind of out of frustration and just kind of like as a point of information of kind of out of the frustration of, I wish some of the like other musicians or producers kind of knew the ins and outs of how singers do things. Each kind of group of musicians have their own kind of ins and outs and idiosyncrasies, as do singers, as do producers. And there are things that, say, other musicians don't necessarily know about how singers do their thing, right? So I was kind of surprised, but I wanted to get that out. I said, well, no, if I put together a group of people, he'll think we've been singing together forever. And I was really just saying that as a matter of fact. But Nelson said, well, why don't you do that? And I said, oh, okay. That's when I called Dorian Howley, Sheryl Crow, and Kevin Dorsey, had them come over to my house the next morning.
Yeah.
For us, I taught them the same song, this kind of 40s jazz song called Jukebox Saturday Night, which has like closed chord harmonies. That's the same song I taught those guys that we got the Dolly Parton audition. I taught that to Kevin and Cheryl and Dorian. And then we did some excerpts from about 4 of Michael's songs: Beat It, Thriller, Off the Wall, and what was the one? Mama say, Mama sa, Mama kun sa, Mama say,
Want to
Mama be starting something.
Yeah.
Right. So that we could kind of cover the eclectic, array of, eclectiveness of his sound, right? So show him that we could cover all of those different areas. But starting with Jukebox Saturday Night, that's the first song that I taught them. That song that I had learned in college. Well, we went over and auditioned. I said, this time, can we just go in a rehearsal room? No band, no microphones, no nothing. Just put Nelson had recorded the other audition, with camcorder. So I said, well, just put the camcorder on us. No microphones, no music, no nothing. That way you hear us raw, exactly as we sound, with no kind of enhancement of any kind. He said, okay. So he turned it on. We introduced ourselves. We started with Jukebox Saturday Night, that 40 song. It goes, mopping up soda pop rickies to our heart's delight, dancing to swiggeroo quickies, Jukebox Saturday Night. Anyway, it gives you an idea.
Love it.
Close chord harmony, 4 voices. We introduced ourselves, we sang that, then we sang little pieces of verse and the choruses of Michael's song, all a cappella. And then Nelson later wanted us to sing a couple of them with music along with the tracks. And he said, okay, well, I'll take this to Michael and, I'll let you know. And that was, I don't know, that was about, noon time or something like that. I think he called me back maybe 3 o'clock. It was definitely that afternoon. And said, Michael wants you guys. He said, when I started playing the tape, he said, when Michael heard about 30 seconds of Jukebox Saturday Night, he said, that's them. I want them.
I love it. So was that an intentional decision to start with one of Michael's own songs, but to throw something else in there that he might like, see a bit of more versatility?
It was absolutely intentional, because this particular song, it's the kind of song that singers have to be on a certain level to be able to sing those kind of close chord harmonies and have, good ear and stuff.
Right.
And so that song just shows a lot, that one little piece, and it's only it's less than a minute long. I knew, because of growing up a singer myself, as being in singing groups and singing harmonies with folks, I knew if someone came along and sang that song for me, that would tell me everything I needed to know, about their ability as singers. So that's why I chose that one.
Do you know if that tape still exists, that original audition?
Oh, yeah, I have it.
Oh, man. I reckon that'd be something the Michael Jackson community would love to see. I don't think anyone's ever seen that original audition of why Michael chose you guys. That would be cool.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, so that's a great story. Thank you. Now tell us about how you first came to meet Michael after he had agreed that you guys would become the backup singers to the Bad Tour.
It was at a rehearsal at Universal Studios on a soundstage. Again, that's 5 minutes from my house too. It's that's one of the runs that I do, was up the hill to Universal, around the back and back. It's one of the 5-mile runs that I did at the time. So we're rehearsing. We met on the sound stage at Universal Studios when he came in for our first staged rehearsal together. He walked in and I can't remember exactly how it started off, but I had met him before, like I said, a mile from my house at Evergreen Studios. That was my first time meeting him. So yeah, I remember I went over to him and I remember asking him if he could give me the list of songs that he wanted to do. That way we could go back and learn all the songs and know them for the next rehearsal. And that, that may seem like a lot, but I mean, we do that all the time. When I go to sing, I've gone to work on an album and we might do 5 songs for that album, having never heard them before. Just go in there, either the sheet music or we sit on the piano and learn it, or we maybe supplement the arrangement a little bit. But it's kind of common, to go in and do a few songs. So I said, well, these are songs that everybody knows, or at least partially knows. If they don't know them completely, yeah, we can get together at my house, learn these songs and know them, when he calls them up. So I think that was the first conversation that I had with him, was asking him for the list of songs so that we could learn them.
And what were your impressions of Michael in that first bad era meeting?
That he is very focused and knows what he wants in a very calm way.
Mm-hmm.
Just very relaxed, focused, easy to talk to, but gets down to business, likable, come there to work, but in a friendly way. I was kind of impressed with that he was very focused and getting to the work, but doing it in a way that was, amenable.
And when the Bad Tour rehearsals actually started proper, so I mean, I'm assuming there would have been quite a long time where you guys would have been rehearsing, like the four of you together, before you joined in with the band and the dancers and everything else. Let's talk about that period before it all came together on a stage or wherever you guys were all rehearsing together. How long was that process of learning all the music?
The singers were one of the last ones called. So they had been rehearsing already, but we hadn't. So we didn't rehearse on our own before. When we came, the band had already been rehearsing. So what we would need to do is, okay, if you guys don't need us right now, then we'd go over to the side and just kind of go over some stuff. If
I
like,
see.
what are the next couple of songs you're going to do? We go over to the side and work on that. But really, that kind of happened right at the sound stage.
I see.
But the band as a whole, wow, I want to say I know at least a month, maybe 2 months sounds like a lot now, but maybe I just remember, I'll fast forward to the last week of rehearsal. We ran through the show 3 times a day. I mean, the entire show with lighting, costume changes, everything as if it were the show. That's why we're doing it on a sound stage, because so you could have everything that is the actual show there, and be able to check the lighting and the area that the people doing costume changes are going to be in and how quickly they're going to change everything. It just basically like rehearsing a play,
Mm-hmm.
But the last week we kind of ran through the show. If I'm not mistaken, it seems like a lot now, but 3 times a day we did the whole show. Yeah. At the end of last week.
Well, that's what I want to really ask about here with the Bad Tour rehearsals, is because some of the folks we've talked to, depends on who you talk to. Everyone's got a very different perspective. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, it was like we were just getting ready for a regular gig or something like that," and then other people will say, "And it was incredibly grueling and taxing and really hard going getting ready for that particular tour." And Michael was really fine tuning everything and wanting everything to be exactly perfect. And so what was your experience? How would you characterize getting ready for that tour compared to, say, other tours?
First of all, I like to be exacting and I like to have it completely in the bag. So Michael's approach was very exacting. He did, how did you say it? Fine tune things. Absolutely. He wanted things to be perfect. But that isn't grueling to me. I mean, that means you do that for a month. The rest of the year is going to just be fun because you've already done the work up front. That's
Right.
how I see that. I loved that. By the time you go out, you definitely know the stuff. You've rehearsed the stuff, you know it. But the level of musicianships, guys learn stuff quick. I'm snapping my finger right now, but you can't hear me. Guys learn things really quick. And now when you say fine tuning, that happens like after the first couple of run throughs. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you know it right off the bat. People at that, musicians and singers at that level. I didn't think of that as being grueling. I think of that as being absolutely thorough. Michael is absolutely thorough. And because of his personality, because he is willing to work so hard, you're willing to work hard with him.
Got it. So he inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I didn't feel like it was very thorough. It was work, but work, come on. We're singing and dancing and making music. Hello? I don't know who's whining about that, but I was.
So, I mean, this is something we don't have a really clear picture on in the story of Michael Jackson, because everything we see as fans is like footage from the tours and all of that. All of the things in rehearsals is kind of mysterious. But to me, that's the interesting time as well, because that's the time where the real work is going on in terms of making the product. So, I mean,
Oh my God. That's why I love This Is It. That's why I love This Is It. You actually get to see it coming together. To me, that's more exciting than seeing a concert. So I agree with you.
So when you think about other artists, like let's talk James Brown, for example, like there's, famously there's stories of him like firing people on the spot if they hit the wrong note and like that kind of thing. Was Michael
Right.
like, how was Michael like that? And if something went wrong in rehearsals, if something wasn't up to his standard, how did he handle that as the boss?
Michael is always a nice guy. Michael is always congenial. Michael is always amicable. Always. I mean, I never saw Michael mad or Michael. That just isn't his personality. That's why when I was first explaining it to you, I was saying one of the things I wanted to reiterate more than once was one of the things I was impressed with is how he's able to get that much work out of people and be focused and be nice about it. Again, I don't know who was whining about it, but the majority of the people on that tour are, consummate professionals who've done a lot of work, and it's really not that hard to do. I mean, we all play music and sing and do stuff. That's what we do for a living. This was just about dialing it in the way Michael wanted it. And to me, I think it's a gift when you have someone who's focused and know what they want and are giving you that direction. To me, I was just kind of wide-eyed about the whole thing. It was the biggest tour that I had been on to date. My personal experience was I was just fascinated by everything from the guys working the lights, all the techs working on the instruments, the makeup folks, the wardrobe people. I just was fascinated by this small village of people that was so professional and great attitudes, and I've kind of found that to be consistent. The higher the gig, the gigs that pay more and the artists that are more famous, the people that are on those tours, they've been through all of that stuff, right? Carrying your speaker to the gig or, it's like we're there and kind of supportive of each other, and everybody that's gotten to that level are kind of, they're not playing when they're not supposed to be playing. They're quiet. They're just, disciplined. So
this might be jogging your memory a little bit, but during those rehearsal times for Bad, can you remember any specific times where Michael did give the backup singers, including yourself, direct feedback on wanting to change something or improve something or do something a little bit different, and how those times went?
Oh, absolutely. This is because one of the times was something that I have a lasting impression about Michael from this. We were doing Billie Jean, and since I was a kid growing up in these groups that I've always been the leader of groups that I was in. So I'm the one learning the harmonies. I basically, before we called it musical director, I was the musical director of groups that I was in growing up. So I pride myself on listening to records and being able to, to glean what's on the record from hearing it. 98% of what we were singing was accurate already when we were working with Michael. But Michael came over one time on Billie Jean, in particular, at the end where it goes, Billie Jean is not my lover. She's just a... Okay, we're singing the harmonies and we're singing the right phrasing. Well, Michael came over and said, well, can you do this? I listen how I want it to go. And he went, Billie Jean is not my lover. She's just a girl. I was like, again, he said, Billie Jean is not my lover. I was like, wow. The breaths that was in the phrasing, the exaggerated breaths in the phrasing was just as important as anything else. And I've sung a lot of different styles with a lot of different folks. And I remember that made me think, wow, he's kind of like a Al Jarreau, Bobby McFerrin. And you can tell he has grown up singing a lot of a cappella stuff because sometimes, like the way I grew up singing, sometimes we're singing more percussively because there aren't instruments playing. We're singing percussively with our voices. But this was taking it to another degree of Michael's own artistry and how he heard his songs. To put those breaths in there as a strategic part of the phrasing, I was like, whoa, I was really impressed with that.
Oh my goodness.
But him coming over to show us that, again, that was that was like, I'm loving every second of him showing us this thing that apparently I didn't hear before or took it as serious,
I mean, you're in a masterclass with the King of Pop right there. And I feel like we get to sort of experience that through you. So thank you. My hair on my arms is standing on end right now.
Dude, and don't get me wrong. The people that are on his tour, I mean, the reason we're doing all this work, body of work, and all these people calling us because we're excellent at what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one showing people harmonies. I'm making up vocal harmonies. I'm making up arrangements. I feel that I am excellent at that. So to have somebody come and show me something that I didn't hear off their record, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like one of the things that I say, some of my friends, we say to each other, singers, it's like, or even players, we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Not just about Michael, about anybody. Well, that sounds good on the record, or that sounds good when I see, the performance online or on TV or something. But what can you do right in the room, standing in front of me? And as I told you before, when we did his audition, I made sure no band, no microphones, just turn the tape recorder, because I know how to put something together and arrange something and focus on it. So I really appreciated Michael. Then Michael got my, that checked that box for me. Michael got my, oh, okay, well, he knows his stuff. He can stand in the room with nothing else and deliver it, right?
Yeah, it's that level of authenticity that drew people to Michael, I think. Yeah, and his shows, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you get out on the road, the Bad Tour is happening. It starts in Japan. There's an Asia leg before it sort of gets revamped halfway through for the second leg. Do you have any particular highlight memories, especially from that first leg of the Bad Tour, when it was sort of in a bit more of a rawer form? That first leg, when I go back and watch the Bad Tour, I gravitate a little bit more towards that first leg because it's got a lot of the songs from, the Victory Tour on there. It's got a few more Jackson songs thrown in there. It's a little bit more organic, and I love that. I love that first leg that was in Japan. What are your memories of that first initial part of the tour?
Well, first, I have to start with when I first walked on to the soundstage at Universal Studio and saw what the set looks like. It's like a space junkyard.
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
I love it. I love it.
It's the first. Yeah. And the first time that I saw lasers, right? When I walked in, they were testing lasers, right? So there was smoke. And then, again, I'm like a kid in a candy store, man, because I'm eating up just all of the parts of what makes a tour come together, So, I mean, it's hard to compare a first because a first is a first. It's like, this is the first time being on stage with Michael and seeing what that's going to be like in a foreign country on stage. Come on. That's like, it's mind blowing. It's excellent. It's fun. You know what I mean? But all of his tours were fun. The music is fun. People love it. I mean, what's not to like? But of course, that first impression is the first impression. So
yeah,
I'm probably like you. I'm like, yeah, it's like, wow, this is really happening,
Yeah. What was your favorite song to perform with Michael on the Bad Tour?
Wow. See, because my tastes are eclectic, it's just that hard to say. Let's on the Bad Tour. I liked Heartbreak Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Shake Your Body Down to the Ground. God, it's hard to say because you like different. Now you're holding a gun to my head, right? Because you like different songs for different reasons. You like different aspects of what's going on. You like the magic trick happening on this song. You know what I mean? Or Billie Jean, to see Michael do Billie Jean is iconic. I get to see Michael doing Billie Jean every night,
Yeah.
20 feet away from me. You know what I mean? Doing the moonwalk so it's like so much exciting about it.
I mean, what you guys had to do not only was vocally deliver, but had, your choreographed movements and all of that kind of stuff as well. And I'm sure you had to be looking in a certain way and everything. Was it hard, especially during Billie Jean, that breakdown at the end, to do your thing, but not keep your eyes on what the heck Michael was doing as well?
Well, fortunately, we could do, what we had to do, when he's doing that is not much, our steps are kind of simple right there. And I'm watching that every night. That's inspiration. And again, that's what that month or however long and ending up with, a week of running the show 3 times a day for that last week. That's what all of that is for. So that Michael wants you to know it like it's a play. He wants you to know it like inside out, so that every night you're making magic and not just like working on a part or working on, that you know it's in your body, and now you're here to have fun with it and perform it. So that's what it was. After that, what you were saying, somebody's calling grueling or whatever, please, that's why that is that way. I love that. The fact that we rehearsed that focused and that intensely means that you get to do the same thing, except now you got an audience in front of you doing it. And interestingly enough, when I was in the group back in East St. Louis, the Deltones, we used to rehearse like that. We rehearsed like 3-4 hours a night, like 6 nights a week, just a cappella. And so by the time we performed, we knew the stuff inside and out. Where a lot of the other groups, right, you could see them making little mistakes here. No, we knew our stuff inside and out. So it's like now to go out on stage and do it in front of somebody, there's no intimidation factor. Now it's just a joy factor because you know what you're doing without thinking about it. So I really appreciated that about Michael's rehearsals and the way Michael did it immediately. Again, that was the group I was in high school. We did that. The group I was in college, the rhythm section would rehearse separately. The singers would rehearse separately. The horn section would rehearse separately. Then we would come together. First of all, you get to show off the part that you got, that's your part, and you get to hear how the other parts like coordinate with your part. So
right.
I was really, now that I think about it, it's funny that now that you asked me that, it makes me aware of, that's why I was really appreciating the way Michael worked, the rehearsals. And so, no, there's no nervousness by the time you get on stage, and there's no like being thrown off by Michael, even though what Michael is doing is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You're so into and know what you're doing. You know what your part so well. That's another part of Michael's genius, is knowing how to rehearse like that, and also how to encourage you in doing your part. Michael's not worried about anybody upstaging him. Michael is, whatever you're doing, Michael's pushing you to do more in a joyous way, in a celebrated way. So that's one of the phenomenal things. There are people who are taskmasters who can be like mean about it or whatever about or not. Michael had you working as hard as the hardest taskmaster, as hard as the hardest drill sergeant. But it was not in an abusive way. It was not in a pushy way. It was in a kind of, let's be excellent way,
I love that. It's great leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a famous quote from Steve Jobs where he said something like, he doesn't play the instruments, he plays the orchestra. I love that analogy of, the orchestra is his instrument. I mean, the analogy doesn't work that well for Michael because of course, Michael was a great musician himself as a singer, but he,
right.
It sounds to me like, his leadership, he was great at inspiring the whole team at becoming the best that they could be.
Wow. You know what? I love that. The way you've just put that perfectly. Part of Michael's genius was the band. It was like a guitar player will sit down to, because I think about this as a writer and a producer and as an artist. I think I want to be as comfortable when I sat down in my studio to do a song as if I were writing the song just with me and a guitar or me and a keyboard. I want my whole studio to be my instrument, right? So I get that analogy that you just made. Michael has that as a live performer. The band is his instrument.
Yeah.
The band is, and he gets it and understands it. And wow, yeah, to the nth degree of getting the best work out of us.
Here is a random technical question for you that I've always wondered about. So when I watch his tours and I focus in on you guys as 4 singers backing up Michael, I'm also thinking about the technicality of all the movement. There's actually quite a lot of choreographed movement that goes on in terms of the steps that you guys need to remember that's happening as you are singing. Who choreographs that usually for a group? Is that one of the choreographers on the tour that would do that? And also, how do you guys end up getting in that level of sync with the movement?
Well, in the beginning, we kind of do our own thing, right? Kind of like we put our own unit together, with some suggestions. Well, first of all, we kind of put our own thing together. And then the choreographer slash, what do you call him? The person that's like staging the whole show.
Like the director?
Right. They kind of chime in and kind of fine tune what we're doing.
I see.
You know what I mean? And so they kind of have an eye to us. They'll fine tune what we're doing or make some suggestions. Okay, let's try that there. Beautiful thing about that, you got people that are professional in doing what they do. They're excellent at economy of movement, And I say movement, in this case, we're talking about choreography, but I mean in voicing, in anything, it's like people know how to use the least amount of energy to get right to the heart of what you're supposed to be executing, right? And get rid of the fluff. So that's the kind of thing, the fine tuning that the choreographer would be doing with us. There's movements that Michael would show the whole band because there's certain things that he wanted the whole band to be coordinated. Well, you've seen the show, so you've seen it.
Yeah.
Then Michael would be the one to first show you what he wanted you to do, and then kind of walk around and fine tune it with different people,
I've always just been completely amazed as I watch these tours at the level of expertise and technicality, not only around the vocal delivery, but also your ability to be all in sync in terms of your movement as well, and just how tight the whole thing is. But I guess that speaks to how thorough the rehearsals were, really.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific memories of the time between the first and second leg of the Bad tour? Because it went through a pretty immense, I don't want to say overhaul, but it changed a lot. Like for example, the Dangerous and History World tours are very similar from the first to the second leg. The Bad tour is quite different. Michael's costuming is different. There's a whole different set of songs that draws a lot more from the Bad album itself. You've got Man in the Mirror. A lot of things have been changed up. The set is changed. Do you remember that interim period of time and what the mission was in terms of changing it up?
After the first leg, I think we went to Pensacola, Florida, and that's when we revamped and added the new stuff with the different stage. I was surprised that, it's a completely different stage and new stuff, because I blew my mind, the
Mad
Japan
Max
stage. Yeah. So we came back kind of the same drill, Now we got, 3 weeks or however, I forget how long, but with the new songs and implementing them, it was a whole nother, comeback kind of not starting completely from scratch, but another thing where the whole stage is set up with all the different stuff. And again, you rehearse everything.
Did Michael ever articulate or explain to the whole crew why it was changing so much?
I don't necessarily remember that. I didn't ask, and I don't know that I was. Please, I'm just excited to be there, and
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple more questions on the Bad era. So you're on the tour. Was there any opportunity for you to, like, outside of performing? You talked earlier about your love for travel. Was there any opportunity for you to do anything with Michael, like go to a theme park or anything like that? Did that happen often or occasionally?
It was kind of a standing thing that if there was an large amusement park in that city, for instance, we went to Tokyo Disneyland, we went to Paris Disneyland, we went to, and it would just be just our entourage. When I say our entourage, it would be Mike. If Michael, they had 3 different parties. We call it the A, B, and C party. A was artists. That was be Michael and his security and management and stuff. B was the band and dancers and makeup. And then C was the crew. And all together, I want to say that was around 150 people. So any of those 150 people would be invited to go to the amusement park. I mean, I remember being in Tokyo. I mean, literally, riding the, roller coaster with Michael, with my son and my daughter, and Michael and Sheryl Crow and Greg Filling Gaines were all on a roller coaster together. And my daughter riding the cup and saucer with Michael, you know. I just remember being in Disneyland, running from one ride to the other because you can just, there's no lines to get in because it's just us. I mean, they cleared out Disneyland just for Michael's entourage and these other parks as well. So,
And I'm assuming, you know, his manner when he was off the job, I guess, not performing. What sort of Michael did you see when he was in those moments, hanging out with you guys?
like the kid Michael, come on, you're at an amusement park. You know, Michael's enjoying that as much or more than anybody else there, you know. I remember one other time seeing him not on the gig was in Berlin. He had on a fat suit. He was at the zoo. I like to go to zoos, and I went to the zoo, and Michael was there. And only reason I knew because I saw Chucky. I saw one of his security. So when I looked closely, and Michael had on a fat suit with sideburns and a mustache and a baseball cap. You know, and another thing that Michael was doing, and people don't know this because he wasn't doing it for the publicity of it. Michael was going to hospitals, you know, and juggling and doing little acts for kids, like sick kids in the hospital. Michael would go to visit them and entertain them. And he did this at many cities around the world, you know, and not with any press following him or anybody, you know. I mean, that's the kind of, you think about it. This guy is one of the richest guys in the world, one of the most famous guys in the world, traveling around doing his tour. And what is he choosing to do on his off time? He's choosing to go to hospitals and entertain sick kids. You know?
Yeah, really speaks to his heart for sure.
Yeah.
So, last question about the Bad World Tour, and this is more of I'm hoping you can think a little like more about the era and the album as well. So, comparing it back to the early 80s, obviously Michael with Thriller and the Victory Tour achieved heights that no other artist has ever achieved, you know, Thriller being the biggest selling album of all time and all of that. And then we get to the Bad era and it becomes the second biggest selling album of all time. Do you think he was relaxed and having fun with that era, or do you think it was on his mind that he had to chase the previous album and success? And what do you think he was motivated more by that, or just having a great time and performing?
Well, of course, I can't know his mind, but I can know that what I see in him as a performer is that he loves to perform. One of the things that makes Michael is that it's just like you and I are having this conversation right now. I'm focusing on your questions. You're focusing on my answers, thinking about what you're going to ask me next. You're not thinking about anything else. I'm not thinking about anything else. That's how Michael performs. That's how he
Right.
is as an artist. Maybe when he's doing the record, he's setting out, okay, I got to beat Thriller. But in each thing that you're doing, you're focused on, you're focused on one song at a time. You're focused on 4 bars of a song at one time. You're focused on a guitar part at one time. You know what I mean? When people talk about, Michael's genius, part of it is the ability to focus in on what you're doing right then and there and making it the most important thing in the world. So I don't think when Michael's on stage in the Bad Tour, he's thinking about, oh, I got to beat he's right. He is executing to the nth degree what he's doing right then. That's why he's Michael, right? A friend of mine, another singer, we were having this conversation one day. We were making a joke about this producer saying, I want this song to be radio ready. I want it to be, I want this to be a hit record. So I was saying to him, can you imagine Rembrandt and in front of Whistler's mother going, okay, if I just color this, put a little bit more brown on the leg of the chair, this will be a $20 million paint. Right? That's what I'm saying. No, it's a $20 million painting because he's going, oh, wait a minute. The light is coming in. Oh, right. The light is coming in from that window. Oh, right. That would be a shadow right there. That's why it's a $20 million painting.
Got it.
So it's the same thing.
I absolutely love that answer. And I love the emphasis you're putting on Michael's focus on whatever he was doing at the time. I completely agree that I think that he realized that as a professional and an artist, is that the more focus you have on whatever particular thing you're doing, the better it's going to be. The more you're thinking about the reason you're doing it or whatever might become a distraction. I think he articulated that sometimes, especially when he was talking about writing a song, get out of the way of the music. Just let the song write itself. And I love that kind of thinking.
Yeah. You're focusing on, it's like you have an idea or something inside of you. And as an artist and as a technician, and you are trying to get that thing that was in your head onto a medium, whether it's an album or in Michael's case, it's on the album. He's visualizing what he's going to do on stage. It's like taking that vision that you have, that who knows where that vision comes from. Like you said, Michael said, who knows where it comes from, but you honor that vision. And he knew that he was excited about the vision. And so he put that kind of work, and Michael has a supreme work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how much work that it takes to really know something. That's what I think Michael is. He knows how much work it really takes to bring his vision into the real world. He knows how much work it takes to execute what he wants to execute. And that's what you see, And not only knows it, he loves that work. If you think you or I or the world loves to see Michael do the moonwalk, I guarantee you Michael enjoys and loves doing the moonwalk more than any of us will ever enjoy watching him doing it. That's why it's exciting, because he is inside of it. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I think about that and I'm like, the only person in the world who didn't get to be a massive Michael Jackson fan was Michael Jackson. We all get to love and appreciate this stuff that he's putting out. He's the one actually doing it. So imagine being the best. Who do you look up to?
Yeah.
Like,
and he's in a whole nother world when he's doing the moonwalk, right? He's probably on the moon,
I love it. Okay, so we get to the end of the Bad World Tour. What a success. I mean, many fans would say that it's their favorite Michael Jackson tour, or perhaps that he was at his peak during that tour. But obviously he didn't stop. So he did a couple of more world tours, and we're going to start talking about the Dangerous Tour. I want you to think about the Bad Tour as compared to the Dangerous Tour in terms of rehearsals. So there was a break of a few years in between. And how did you hear about the Dangerous Tour and become involved in that again?
Well, when it was building up again, I guess as it got closer to when we started, doing the pre-production, I got a call, which I was surprised, actually. Not because I didn't feel I had done a good job for him, but he wanted the same band back. I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking, okay, he's going to, artist is going to move on to a new thing. But when I think about it now, it makes complete sense. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You get excellent people that you feel good about, you feel familiar with, and you've gotten used to working with them, and there's a camaraderie there. I didn't have to audition for that.
Interesting that you phrase it like that, because you're 100% right. And it's just made me think about that Michael's live work. It stands in contrast a little bit to his recorded work, in that every time he did an album, yes, there were some similar people that would come back, particularly session musicians or different folks that would, flesh out the instrumentation. But largely, Michael would bring on a different team of people for each album. So the 80s obviously is Quincy. The 90s, you're looking at Teddy Riley and then Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. The 2000s, you've got Rodney Jerkins and the Darkchild crew coming in. And he updated that sound fairly frequently. It was almost like he was not afraid, but he definitely wanted a new sound for each era and a new vibe for the album, I guess. Whereas when you're looking at his tours, absolutely, from, whether it's Jonathan Moffat or, Kevin Dorsey or Jennifer Batten or yourself, he's got people that are there for 20 years working with him on stage, even right up to This Is It, which is, it's an interesting contrast between his recorded work and his live work.
Wow. See, And see, I had never thought about, the contrast of it like that. That's a very good point. Wow, it makes me feel better.
Well, I mean, I think it's a testament to your professionalism that he would keep going back to you for tour after tour. And so I can understand why you would be surprised getting the call, not because, like you said, you did a bad job, you did a great job, but more because he was a pop artist. He was the kind of artist that every album would be different personnel.
Right, right.
So when you got the call, did you need to immediately go into rehearsal, or was there a period where you had to consider this? Or were you like, because you said during the bad era, you had to throw up wanting to go with Michael or be on the Dolly Parton show. In the dangerous era,
Right, right.
was it a similar decision, or were you just all in?
Okay, well, here's the difference. So go backwards in time to, I'm thinking, right, I'm leaving town where I'm working with all of these. I mean, at the end of, we get our Internal Revenue Service, we get, each job you do, you get what we call a W-2 or a W-4, I forget which one you call, that documents how much money you got paid from that job, right? Most people have one W-4, right? They are most two. They work one job, they get, I mean, I would have 50, at least 50 W-2s, because I'm working for all the different record companies. I'm working for all the movie companies. So I'm leaving all of that. Goes back to how, my fear of leaving town, right?
Right.
Well, what would happen on tour, you go on legs, and they call them legs because you do a continent, and then while they're moving the equipment to the next continent, usually by boat, or with Michael is by boat, or I think one leg it was these Russian planes. Anyway, we would get like a couple of weeks off, or at least a week, use a week or 2 weeks off, while they went from Japan to Europe, and then from Europe to Australia, right? There's another two.
Mhm.
Each time you get 2 weeks off, right? So I remember coming back in town after Japan, and every other time I came back in town, within being back in town, a day or two, my phone is ringing to do recording sessions. And at the end of the tour, 15 months later, it felt like, as far as my fear of how much work I might be, taking away from myself, or somebody else taking my place, whatever, in town. At the end of 15 months of touring with Michael, it felt like I left on Friday and came back on Monday. The difference being, now I tour with Michael Jackson. Everybody wants to ask questions about Michael stuff, and in addition to, and my own experience of having to, tour with Michael brought a whole nother energy of live performance to my studio stuff. And when I think about it, in retrospect, it makes sense. Yeah, we were all over the world and outside of LA and outside of where I was working every day, but we're on television all the time. We're in the media all the time. So it wasn't like I was out of sight, out of mind. We were always in sight and in mind, even on the tour. And it was a big tour, and it was exciting. So that was, also feeding back to Hollywood. As soon as you get back in town, people want to hire you because they can say, oh, yeah, we got Michael's singer singing on this, or, and they want to hear stories, what you guys been doing, So it was that kind of energy. So no, because of the experience of the first tour and seeing how that happened, right? Taking what I thought was a big chance, and it just worked out great. I didn't lose any work. My work stayed the same, or even got, hardly could get more. I can't do more than 4 sessions a day. But anyway, I think it kind of cured me of that feeling, having gone on tour with Michael once. And it was such a phenomenal experience. Oh, I was just head over heels excited, and with no hesitation about going on a second tour. Yeah.
So there was 4 years in between, because the bad tour wrapped in 88 and the dangerous tour started in 92. So it would have been roughly around 4 years. When you came to work on the dangerous tour, was it similar to how you described the bad tour, where most of the prep work had sort of been done, the staging was ready, the stage was ready, the costuming was done, and you guys came in a few weeks before showtime? Was it similar with Dangerous, or were you there earlier?
No, same thing. I guess all the things are coming in the same way. All of the prep for the tours are consistent.
Right.
All that same work was done for the second tour. Like like the first tour. The only difference for me is now I know that that's how Michael does it, type of thing.
And it was a very different tour. So when you get to the Dangerous tour, there's now Kenny Ortega running the show. It's much more theatrical. You've got Michael popping up through the stage with the toaster and, the jetpack and the angel coming down during Will You Be There, and everything's a lot grander and a lot more theatrical. What were your thoughts when you saw all of that coming together compared to Bad?
Bad was that by comparison of other tours, right?
Mm.
Michael is always bringing like the latest technology and innovating something that you haven't seen before, right? In his stage shows,
Yeah.
magic. And so, okay, so it was some more of that. Basically, I mean, to put it simply, for me, it was like, oh, okay, there's more of this now. But still, what I'm doing, I still need to be focused and executing what I'm doing. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I think that's the part of where the professionalism comes in. You're there to nail your part and enjoy the other stuff that's going on around you, at the same time, which makes your job easier.
At the MJCast, we pride ourselves on a real honest look at what was going on in prep for each of these tours and in Michael's world behind the scenes. And one thing that's sort of come out a little bit more recently within the last few years is a couple of years ago, tour rehearsal prep for Dangerous leaked in the form of video. So we've always had the rehearsals on tape that we've been able to watch for many years. I can't really recall where the rehearsals were in this instance, but there's moments in this rehearsal footage where he's clearly quite upset. And in one particular time, he's like sitting on the side of the stage, and I think Karen Faye has to come over and sort of console him during this moment because something's going wrong. Do you recall
Oh,
anything in the Dangerous rehearsal time period where Michael was not quite the same as the Bad period, or were you just seeing the same Michael?
I was saying the same Michael, but when you just described that, that kind of sounded like when we were going to do an HBO special, and that's when Michael kind of collapsed from exhaustion on stage, or that's what and so maybe somebody got that, and I remember he was sitting on the side of the stage, kind of. Well, they said he collapsed from exhaustion. I mean, I remember Michael just kind of bending over and then sitting down on the stage, and maybe that's what you saw that footage of. That's the only time I remember seeing him, yeah, incapacitated any kind of way, if you want to call it that. It was
Yeah,
when
yeah.
we
I
were
mean,
doing the HBO special, and we ended up
yeah,
not doing that special.
that's right. Yeah. Well, we just recently, a couple of weeks ago, interviewed Jennifer Batten, and we're about this. And I will just take a note there for when we finish the Dangerous time period to come back to that, because that is an absolutely fascinating time. I didn't realize you actually worked on that, but I'll just leave that little note there. But that's okay. I was just curious about that particular footage from the Dangerous rehearsals. I'll send you that later if you want to have a look at it. But it is
Yeah,
kind of a bit alarming, and I know that as you move through the 90s, especially in how the Dangerous tour finished up, which we'll get to a bit later, and then obviously with This Is It, I'm just trying to sort of pinpoint at what point in time these struggles around touring kind of started for Michael, and whether you noticed any of that even in the Dangerous prep.
So what is this footage showing? Michael sitting on the stage and Karen Faye consoling him?
Yeah. I'm being genuine. I'll send you the footage, I guess, when we wrap talking. It's definitely the Dangerous tour rehearsals, and he's doing
And
his
is the
thing.
band is on stage with him and everything?
Everyone's on stage, everyone's actually performing, and it literally looks like he's in some kind of physical pain. And then he has to sit
Oh,
down on the side of the stage. He looks uncomfortable and upset. And then Karen Faye walks over to him. I can't remember whether she sits with him, but she's sort of like consoling him. Whatever they're talking about is not, you can't hear it because it's not mic'd up, but
right.
this has only really come out in the last couple of years, this footage, but it sort of made
Hmm.
fans question. I guess we always knew that Michael was struggling with, medication and different stuff towards the end of the Dangerous tour, and then onwards towards This Is It. But it made, I
See,
guess,
I
it's
didn't
made.
see. I don't even know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, many people, I guess, who worked on the tour didn't know. They didn't see it going on. Those of us who would consider ourselves, I guess, historians in the Michael world, it's just made us reorient, how early were these struggles happening? Was it happening even before you guys went on tour in 92? I just wanted to know if you had any, I
Huh.
guess,
Well,
recollections of seeing Michael struggling.
let me just kind of just give you my impressions.
Sure.
Michael's show is very physical, right? And sometimes according to where we're rehearsing, or if it's warm in there, or it would not be something that would pop out in my mind that Michael needed to sit down and like hold
Yeah.
his head down or to be exhausted. So that wouldn't like be something that would, oh my God, what's wrong here? Do you know what I mean? That would not be a strange occurrence to us on stage with him. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know to the extent of what you saw, but to see Michael, to stop, to be exhausted or to sit, that wouldn't have been it's like I said, it's like to do these type of tours is almost like being a professional athlete going out, it's very physical. Yeah, that's the only thing that comes to mind. I don't have any memory of thinking ever that, oh my God, Michael is not as up to it this time. But I don't remember thinking or feeling anything like that
Right.
for the Dangerous tour at all.
Yeah.
So for us on stage, that would have been nothing. That's nothing strange. You know what I mean? That's like somebody getting tired, after doing a grueling 2-3 songs or something, and that's what rehearsals are for. You know what I mean? You're not going to do it in the show, so you can take that kind of break in rehearsal. Yeah, that wouldn't have been something of note to me to go, oh my God, But again, even with someone who's already larger than life, people need to have others larger than life stories to tell, right? Stuff that, for instance, Michael, I know this for a fact, before Michael even knew Sheryl Crow's name completely, this early on in rehearsals, because somebody took a picture of them facing each other, like on I Just Can't Stop Loving You, right? They're standing face to face, maybe about a face length away from each other's face, right? And they're in their outfits because, again, rehearsals would be fully outfitted and lighting and everything. Then that gets in the Enquirer or some other paper as, Sheryl Crow's Michael's girlfriend. I remember seeing that in the paper when Michael didn't even know Cheryl's name. So that's the
Right.
kind of stuff that people just take and blow up, Well, of course, and in Michael's case, it's just so many things that people blow up because he's not giving a lot of interviews and then people just start, coming up with stuff.
When you guys were out on the road in the Dangerous era, do you have any favorite memories of those particular performances?
Maybe this is because just another part of me in Paris sticks out, but that's because somebody posted it online and it made me remember it. Man, I can't tell you any one night of a performance that I wasn't elated and excited. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah, of course.
what kind of person can be standing on stage with Michael Jackson with, anywhere from 60 to 100,000 people in the audience going nuts before you even walk out on the stage and not be excited every night? You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to pinpoint one thing or another thing because so many things jump out as just exciting moments, within the shows.
Moving through the Dangerous era, obviously during this time period, Michael was accused of some pretty horrific things. And at the MJCast, obviously our position is one of believing in Michael's innocence based on all the available evidence. And I want to know from your perspective of someone participating on this tour. I mean, obviously the tour finished up early and it had to be cancelled and you guys had to go home, I think from South America, which must have been very shocking in itself. But when you found out about these horrific allegations regarding Michael, what was your reaction?
Shocked. My kids, you were talking about the shows that you like the best, the Japan tour. My kids, my son was 14, my daughter was 11. So I had kids on tour with Michael, as did other band members have young kids on tour with Michael. There's no funny business with my kids. Michael's great with We were in Tokyo on Christmas, all the kids. I didn't even know that Michael knew every individual, band members or any people in the entourage's kids. I didn't even know that he knew each and every one of our kids. All of our kids got presents, for Christmas. My kids were with us in Japan for what, 2 weeks, doing everything with us backstage and traveling with us. And I mean, I never had any fear or hint or any thought of any weirdness about Michael with kids.
And so just to be clear, were your kids, they were like hanging out with Michael at his hotel or that kind of, going to the amusement parks with him, that kind of thing? Because there were like a lot of families that would come on tour with Michael as well. Was it that kind of like hanging out?
They would be hanging out, like I would be there, or we go to amusement parks. My kids went to the amusement parks in Japan. My daughter went to the music park in Paris. It didn't even cross my mind to think about, my kids going to do anything with Michael or with some other kids around Michael. Again, it's just like Michael being exhausted on stage during a rehearsal. It's just not something that I was thinking about.
When you found out about this, obviously this is towards the end of the tour, so it's happening during the South America leg. Was there ever any chat amongst the band around, oh my goodness, this is happening? Or, I mean, I guess this is pre-internet, so it wouldn't have been something you're seeing every day. But was there chat amongst you guys of this is really serious?
I mean, obviously the tour was halting. It was just Mexico City, by the way. The tour was halting, and that was going to be the end of the tour because he had to go back and answer some allegations. So I'm sure with some, talk about being bummed that the tour is ending and what does this mean for my personality. I'm not a person that gossips or is interested in getting into people's lives, whether they're celebrities or not celebrities. So, I mean, that's not my personality. And I had my personal experience of Michael gave me no reason to believe or feel anything about that. My first thought was, and still is, what better target could someone choose than Michael Jackson if they wanted to, accuse somebody of doing something with some kids? He loves kids. He's around kids. He's a target for that. And I certainly know that people are opportunists. And, I didn't know any of the people, any of those kids or their families, again, because I wasn't hanging around socially with them doing anything. But I know that people can be that low down.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about this last night. I mean, Michael was such a generous person, but even to the point where I would say maybe even a little naive. Like, I mean, the thing is, he was accused of horrific things that nearly ended his career, but yet after that did continue to sort of put himself in a vulnerable position with some of these families. It just makes me think like it must have been frustrating for people close to him, around him, that saw him, I guess, put himself in these vulnerable positions out of generosity. I'm not saying anything was wrong, but like his career was nearly ended by this. And I guess it must have been frustrating for those around him to see that and to, he's doing it out of the kindness of his heart, helping underprivileged kids, wanting to give these kids an opportunity. But to other people who know how the world works would have been thinking, you're putting yourself in such a difficult spot here. This could happen again.
Right. I mean, I was frustrated that, about the whole thing, about the allegations and, like you said, about him putting himself back into those situations. But that's a point of view, isn't it? Back into those situations. What if he really wasn't doing any goddamn thing? You know what I mean? Then he wasn't putting himself into anything. He was being a nice guy that likes to be around kids and likes to help people out. And he's not allowing the media or other things to make him change his life drastically in that way from that. Do you know what I mean? So I guess that's one way of looking at it as well. I mean, Michael did this interview with this guy that came to Neverland. God, I hate this guy. This guy just got, cozy and comfortable with Michael and asking him all these kind of questions, and then came back and put his slant on it, making it seem like Michael was weird because he had kids around. I don't know I can't think of the guy's name.
Martin Bashir.
Right. So, yes, I believe there's a bit of naivety, and a naivety that I don't think that you or I could understand in a
Hmm.
certain way. If you think about it, can you imagine from the time you're 10 years old, because the Jackson 5 blew up immediately all over the world.
Yeah.
Can you imagine from the time you're 10 years old, you never get to meet anyone again who doesn't already know who you are, that you're famous, that you have a lot of money, that right?
Hmm.
What point of view do you have about the world or dealing with people? Do you know what I mean? And a person who has spent his childhood, like, rehearsing and, building that group and trying to be excellent as a performer with his brothers and, spending where, other kids out playing here and there, they were busy being in Jackson 5, being absolutely professionals. Michael's been a consummate professional since he's like 10 years old, with the whole world knowing who he is.
I'm loving all of your thoughts and the way that you're putting, that realistic perspective on it again. I mean, he was a person that didn't have a normal life, a normal childhood, and we can't judge him through the same lens that we might look at other people. So I think there's some really great points. Thank you so much for addressing those. I know that they're not the nicest topics in the world. And I just wanted to clarify again with you before just we move into that history era, but towards the end of the Dangerous World tour, when everything wrapped up and really got cancelled. I mean, the tour was it had to be cancelled because Michael went into drug rehabilitation. I just wanted to clarify in the weeks prior to Michael going to rehab in due to Liz Taylor kind of intervening, did you notice anything alarming where you were thinking he's struggling here on the tour with not dependency. I'm not saying you saw that, but did you notice him struggling towards the end of that tour?
No, not at all.
Okay, so again, just like between Bad and Dangerous, bit of a break between Dangerous and History.
Mm-hmm.
HBO, you dropped a bit of a bomb during the interview there that you were there for a pretty mysterious period of time in Michael's performing career when he was rehearsing for the HBO specials that unfortunately weren't to happen because he collapsed on stage. Are you able to remember what that show was going to be like or how different it was to other shows?
Wow, nothing sticks out in my mind now. And also, to be technically correct, he did not collapse on that. That's how they like described it when they said, but he didn't collapse on stage. He just sat down, and needed to take a break, and put his hands. I
Right.
think he put his hands in his head, maybe, which she doesn't do in rehearsal normally. And I don't think that was the time that you were talking about that you may have seen in rehearsal, because it was Debbie that went over to him.
Yeah.
Who was later his wife. She's the one that went
Right.
over and kind of consoled him. And they just asked us would we wait outside of the theater.
Right. So you didn't see he didn't fall over on the stage.
No.
Wow. Okay.
Not that I remember. I don't remember him falling over on stage.
The History album is one of, I think, fans' favorite albums because it's so raw, so real, so autobiographical, and so relevant to the allegations that happened in 93.
Mm-hmm.
It directly talks about them in the album more deeply than I think he did in any interview. So when that tour is starting to prep, I'm curious about maybe not your perception of Michael, but more, did you view that tour as a comeback after the allegations, or was it to you more like, cool, I just get to go on the road with Michael again?
I was very happy and excited. How can I say it? I was proud. Is not the best word. It's not the word I want to use. I just remember having a lot of respect for Michael, because if anybody, I know Michael is a sensitive individual. And if anyone, what is worse than being accused of child molestation? Rape isn't even, right? Being accused of child molestation is about as low as it gets. You know what I mean? And for him to still come back from those allegations, and that someone who's known the love of the world since he's 10 years old, and then this crap comes, I was just so, first of all, when I started hearing the record and hearing the things on the record, for me, it was my favorite as well. Because
Mhm.
as records progressed, and especially by the time he got to History, it became one of those albums, like for me, like a Stevie Wonder or a Beatles album, where you put the needle down and listen, or Marvin Gaye, where you listen to the whole album, right? I'm the kind of person that finds a song on the album, I play that song 50 times before I play another song. Well, I found myself listening to History in that way, like I would listen to a Stevie Wonder album, or, just one song after another. And you put it very eloquently. Him answering some of those allegations, it was very personal and raw. And I was like,
Mm.
wow,
And he's
this is
he's
a different
swearing on
Michael.
the record for the first time in the song "This Time
Yes,
Around."
yes,
He's saying,
yes.
"This time around, I'm taking no shit." Like, he was real.
So that was my excitement about going on that tour. I know this may come off as a strange thing to say. I'm not worried about making money. I am excellent at what I do. I'm hired all the time, So it's not like, oh, I get to go on another. No, I love making music, and I love that I've gotten a gift to be able to sing and use my voice, and it moves people. And I didn't do anything to get that. That's why I call it a gift. I am very humbled by that. Why do I get to sing? Out of all the different gifts that somebody can get, how come I get to sing? I get to do something that people pay me a lot of money for, that I love to do, and I'm in demand doing it. So for me, it's about taking that and being of service with it. And that's what I see Michael as, someone who's being of service. He's working that hard because he is taking that gift that he's gotten, and he is shouting that gift out to the world. And I
Yeah.
love him for that. I think that's what people love him for. And to be a part of that, it's just excellent. So that's my feeling about it. It's never about, oh, this is another paying gig. No. As a matter of fact, when I went on Michael's first tour, I took a pay cut. I would have made probably 3 times as much money, at least three, probably more than that, with residuals and royalties and stuff, to stay in town. So it's
Mm.
never been about making the money for me. With Michael, there are very few gigs that I do just for the money. Some of them, but for the most part, I love what I'm doing, and then to get to do it with someone who you respect, who they are as an artist and their work ethic, and who they are as human beings. Like I said, here's a man that I personally know for a fact, all over the world. He's going to visit hospitals. Come on. I love the guy.
You mentioned the word or the term vocal director, I think, earlier in the interview. And I just wasn't clear whether you were meaning that in relation to other tours for other artists, or whether it was for Michael Jackson, or like, did your role change throughout these tours? What was your particular role for the History tour, for example?
Yes, I was the one, as I told you, in the first tour, I actually put the group together, taught the songs that we were going to audition with, and then played the role as the vocal director when we didn't have an official name for that. In town, even when I'm doing records, albums, any of that stuff, we don't call anybody the vocal director. That's something that came about later. That's a bit of a touchy issue for me because,
Mm-hmm.
the truth be told, I was always that. On all the tours, we're basically doing pretty much the same songs. It's the same people. Maybe we're adding some more songs, but that really didn't change. It maybe changed in name. For This Is It, Dorian was the one that called me for the tour
Right.
because he knew the musical director called Dorian to put the singers together. So Dorian called me and we auditioned other people.
Right.
But Dorian was the vocal director legitimately for that tour.
Yeah.
All the other ones, I was.
As a live vocalist, I would love your thoughts on how much Michael Jackson ended up relying on lip-synced vocals in his later tours. So obviously when you look back on the Destiny tour, the Triumph tour, the Victory tour and Bad tour, everything's completely live. Every song, every note, it's all authentic and live. When we get into Dangerous, there's a little bit more reliance on lip-synced vocals, backing tracks, or I think he used to refer to it as in the box, or I think that's what Michael Prince told me once, that Michael would say, I want to go to the box for that song. And then when we get to the History tour, I'd say over half of the tour is pre-recorded vocals for the lead. So I'm curious, because you were a part of all of these tours and this is your expertise, this is your area, live vocals. When you saw Michael slowly relying more and more on the record vocals, what were your thoughts as that was happening?
Okay, I am going to, no more than I would explain one of the magic tricks on the show, right? Because that gives away the magic. I'm not going to talk about that other than to say that it was minimal. And if there's any justification for it, it's because, like I said, the shows are very physical. I think that, and this is my genuine feeling about it, because subsequent artists since Michael heavily rely upon that, some of that has been heaped upon what they thought Michael was doing. When Michael is more like the old school, like a James Brown or a Jackie Wilson, who can sing and dance and act a fool, as they say, all live without help. So I think some of that bad rap has been because they know, you see subsequent artists, even today, right? You see other artists doing that. So now people are going back and assuming Michael was doing way more than that than he might have been doing. And I guarantee you it was not half of the show, nowhere near.
Okay. So on the History tour, do you have any specific memories that stand out as your favorites from that particular world tour?
Oh, yeah. All I want to say is they don't really care about us.
Yeah.
We call them the toasters. I love when the dancers like popped up out of the toasters at the beginning. My biggest impression from the History tour was that I saw Michael coming into another level of artistry for me personally, in that it was more personal. That's probably my biggest impression. Michael performing on stage and the lighting and effects and the dancing and all of that is excellent. I mean, that's consistent through all of the tours. You know what I mean? So it's not new that we come back and be excellent again. For me, it was the material was special to me.
Right.
On History.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind for me about what you're saying there is the ending of the song Earth Song, where, the tank comes out and the girl, comes on with the sunflower.
Yes.
And Michael's, I think his ability to emote and tell a story obviously was exceptional during that period of time.
Well, I agree. And it also goes along with, and you said it too, it got more personal, right? So even though he had theatrics and stuff going on and was telling stories from bad to dangerous, when we got to History, now he's telling personal stories. He's talking about things that are coming from his gut.
Right.
And so now those theatrics take on more power because they're about real things and things that mean something to him. And we have a saying about just recording, period, like, what you put into a medium is what people get out. Like, if you're having fun, maybe think of one of your favorite songs that you like to party to. I guarantee you those musicians were partying when they made that record. Do you know what I mean? I guarantee you the record that makes you cry, that sad song, that musician felt that hurt. And the performance went into that medium and it came out to you when you played it on your speakers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as he got closer to telling more personal stories, the power of that is different. A pop song is a pop song and it's great. You can perform it great. a song written from something that's personal to them and is a beautiful song and is performed and staged in a beautiful way, what do you multiply that by? You know what I mean? 1,000? 10,000? The power of that. And I think that's what we're seeing in history for me. You talking about civil rights and all kind of stuff, you know?
I want to move into the This Is It era here. I want to try to get to the bottom of a few things here. So Kevin Dorsey's version of what happened very, very early in rehearsals is that even before rehearsals started, I think, he felt like he was sort of ousted from the tour, potentially because there were some negative things happening around Michael. From my interview with him, my takeaway was that he was asked to leave or not included. His story is that he actually turned up for rehearsals and was turned away. He thought that he was included and a part of the production, and he arrived at rehearsals and was physically turned away and told that you're not participating in this, you're not a part of this. And his takeaway was that Michael was being surrounded by individuals at a top level that were allowing a pretty dark scenario to unfold for their own benefit. And that he wished he could have been there to help protect Michael. And that's a similar story we've heard from some of his bodyguards, actually. I guess what I want to know from your perspective, and I just want to tell a couple of excerpts before I ask you the question, but when you look at some of the key people around Michael, some of the people closest to him, you've got Kenny Ortega sending emails at the 11th hour, blowing the whistle on the production, saying that Michael's unwell and incapable of committing to the production anymore. You've got Karen Faye sending similar emails. You've got the production manager, Bugsy, also wrote an email to Randy Phillips, and I'll quote, "I have watched him deteriorate in front of my eyes over the last 8 weeks. He was able to do multiple 360 spins back in April. He'd fall on his ass if he tried now. He was a basket case, and Kenny was concerned he would embarrass himself on stage, or worse yet, get hurt. The company is rehearsing right now, but the doubt is pervasive." One last quote. When you read Jermaine Jackson's book, he talks about Michael being almost bullied by people on the production in rehearsals. This is a quote from Jermaine Jackson's book. "On one occasion, he deliberately spoke into his mic," meaning Michael, "as he walked off stage. 'I just want somebody to be nice to me today.' A voice from the floor yelled back, 'If we could just have a coherent person here today.' 'They wouldn't speak to me like that if Joseph was here,' Michael muttered. At times, Michael hated the way he was spoken to." So those kind of quotes, I mean, some of them are on record from the AEG trial. Some of them are not. So what I just want to ask, Darryl, is your perspective on what happened.
All those things that you're saying are news to me. I wasn't like, my behind the scenes, with Michael is showing up from rehearsals and being on stage. I don't know other things about his private life. I didn't know anything about those emails. As a matter of fact, this is the first time hearing about those emails. I'm not someone who has followed the tales and the stories and stuff and the ins and outs of, just because that's not what my relationship with Michael was. My relationship with Michael was professional and performing and working with him as an artist. And those are the things that I can speak on the most. I never heard Michael say that on the microphone or get that response, unless it was said when I wasn't there. I mean, I'm not saying that Jermaine was lying. I wasn't there to hear that. Kevin Dorsey was not at any vocal rehearsals, and I was there from the very beginning of our vocal rehearsals. If he's speaking about some time before that, then I don't know about that. But he was not included in any of the vocal rehearsals.
Did you notice anything during rehearsals as they progressed with Michael on stage? Did you notice anything alarming or deteriorating?
Okay, from my point of view, just like I said about Dangerous and someone mentioning Michael exhausted and sitting on the side of the stage and Karen coming to console him, that wouldn't have been a strange thing to see in rehearsal, given what rehearsals are and how uh, 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 physical they are. Um, Now, fast forward to the history tour. Michael is several years older than the last time we performed, so I'm expecting to see some difference, right? Even before we show up, right? So there, in rehearsals, there's something we call marking, marking, like you'll mark something. So you won't, like you'll mark it to show that, say if you have say a song to sing, you'll maybe sing a few of the words, and then you leave out some because you're marking it. You're not singing full out, but you're marking it to show, okay, here's where the timing is. I'm in the right time, and I know here's where the next thing comes in. Same thing with dancing. Michael is not dancing full out. Michael will do some of the things and say, okay, this is what happens here. And it's the kind of thing you do in rehearsal. You don't do it full out. You give an example. So for the lighting people or for, the people that are staging in a certain way, this is where I'm going to be here. I'm going to do this move. Now, was Michael doing those things as full out as from the first 2 tours that I did with him? No. But again, that wasn't anything remarkable to me. I know that Michael is the consummate performer and understands his craft. So maybe he's marking it at a different way because he's older now. But Michael would turn on a thing that he's doing and you see the full of, oh, okay. It's still Michael, right? And then he'd be marking other things. From my perspective on stage as a performer, understanding that even when I'm performing, say if I were doing a recording for you, right? You want to get the sound on the mic. I'll just give you enough so that the engineer can get his settings from how far my mouth is from the microphone. Or, okay, I'm going to go high here, so he needs to know if he's going to back off of something, right? So he can make his adjustments, right? It's the same kind of thing. But I'm marking. When I get ready to do performance, now you hear the full out thing. There's no need to do the full out thing when you don't need it.
Right.
So that is my perspective of seeing Michael's rehearsals from the very first tour to the last. And of course, in the last tour, he's more reserved. I'm going, okay, well, he's older now. He's smarter. There's no need, he doesn't need to burn, he doesn't have to prove anything in rehearsal. Only that, okay, here's the timing, here's where this happens, here's where that happens. Okay, you need to see how I'm gonna turn it on, and he turn it on, right? So, and as far as, Kenny Ortega has a different relationship and ins and outs with Michael, as does Karen Faye. They're like, right, Karen Faye is right there with him. She's kind of like a sister to Michael, Kenny is there with him all the time. I see Michael when Michael comes out of his dressing room and comes onto the stage, and now we're gonna, he's there because functionally he needs to be there so that we know what we're doing in relationship to what he's doing, if there's movement or lighting, or, you know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing that I was privy to. And if you want to call anything diminishing, the difference in how many years was it from the, from the history tour even to this one?
12 years. He wrapped the history tour in 97 and was rehearsing for This Is It in 2009.
Okay, so I'm not expecting or anything. I'm coming to rehearsal to kind of like, okay, so let's see what it is and get in the moment and do what I need to do. And I see that Michael is more reserved. That wasn't in any way alarming to me.
So thank you for that insight. I mean, and it's clear, like when you watch the film, This Is It, there are moments of absolute greatness, especially vocally. Human Nature, for example, sounds sublime performed live in that footage. I personally feel, and I've said this on the show a number of times, but I think that the band, the vocals, everything in This Is It sounded better than Michael had ever sounded before. When you have added elements like Bashiri Johnson as a percussionist, I don't think Michael had ever had a percussionist on tour before.
Right, he had.
The sound was fuller and it just sounded absolutely beautiful. My only wish is that it could have happened.
I think the next best thing, which was the movie This Is It, to me, oh my God, it's like, wow. When do you get that? When do you get to see the artist putting together his show? To me, that's so much better than maybe that's because I'm in the business or something. But or just the kid that I am. That's so much more interesting and exciting than seeing a show. Just enough add another element to this. Michael always recorded everything, rehearsals, everything. Because, and I remember him saying once, we were standing underneath the steps, it was in between, I forget what song, and he came over and he was saying he records everything because he doesn't ever want anyone to say that this didn't happen.
Right.
Stuff can get lost to history, right? He said, I don't want, so Michael is recording all of his rehearsals, including This Is It. Just if you look at it from that point of view, do you think he wants to have recordings of himself faltering in front of people? You know, it's being recorded at his behest, you know?
I've always been curious about when you watch the film and there's the close-up footage of, the whole band performing together. I know there's lots of, because it's taken from so many different rehearsal sessions. When you see a lot of the close-up footage of the band performing or you guys as the backup vocalists singing and all of the bulk of the music that's in the film, were you guys brought in to re-record the show after June 25th when Michael passed away for the film? No.
I wasn't. If anybody was, I don't know about that.
So it's all from the time.
And just from being in rehearsal, no. I mean, I could hear it. I heard it in rehearsal. I mean, again, you have to look at most of the musicians that work with Michael are recording musicians as well as live musicians. I mean, they're just like, they're some of the best in the business. And, we start rehearsing the song. We got the song down in 1 or 2 takes. The rest is just tweaking and playing it for the other elements to happen, for the dancing to happen, for the lighting to happen. But the consistency of the music being great, that's kind of the level that the people that he hires, that's the level we play at and sing at,
You know what is interesting when you watch the film is that moment where you guys are rehearsing The Way You Make Me Feel. You've got Michael Bearden, the musical director, who's playing around with a different arrangement for The Way You Make Me Feel.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael is ad-libbing a moment, which is totally unique and amazing. And Michael Bearden's saying, we should weave that in there. We should get it in there. And then Michael responds, no, I want it to sound exactly like it sounds on the record. And I want to know what your thoughts are on that. Did you like that direction of let's make it sound exactly like the album? Or would you have preferred a little bit more experimentation and organic? Let's do some new stuff.
There was organic stuff happening within the context of playing it like the record. So one of the things that the type of show that Michael does, like when people ask me about touring with different people, like say Rod Stewart. Rod's point of view is it's a party and we're the life of the party. I've been on stage with Rod and Rod will, sing a song and the fiddle player kind of messed up the intro and Rod went to the audience. Why don't we let him play that again? Right? I've seen Rod be on stage and go, all of a sudden he'll go, hold on, and he'll reach down and pick up the lyrics that he's reading from. He said, this is a new one. I don't know all the lyrics. So let me just, That's Rod. And people love Rod for that. I love Rod for that. Michael's show is about execution. Everything is executed, which means lights hit at a certain time of movements of his body, costuming. The dancers have to leave the stage at a certain amount of time, get dressed, be back for a certain amount of time. There are so many cues that happen, both visually and sonically off of things that Michael does, like a James Brown show, like Hit Me. And James Brown moves certain parts of his body. Same thing, Michael got that.
Right.
Move certain parts of his body and something happens with the band, something happens with the lighting, something happens with, you can't vary that, but so much to have the overall effect of what that is. Do you know what I mean? A part of, I think, the beauty of his shows, and it's obviously proven that it's some of the best in the world as the world's response to him. You put it together, it's more like a play than just some jam. I mean, if you want to put it on the spectrum of a jam session and a play, it's a play. That things are executed at a certain amount of time. Now, within that, then there's the organic things that happen within that every night. Just like somebody asked me, I remember somebody asked me, wow, man, on tour, don't you get tired of singing the same thing every night? I remember the first time that I met Stevie Wonder. I went to a rehearsal of him with the bass player, Nate Watts. He introduced me to Stevie. And on the way to rehearsal, he said, they were rehearsing to go out. And he said, man, I guarantee you, when we get here, Stevie gonna have some new stuff to show us. We ain't gonna even be rehearsing, I get there, and the first thing that they started was this song called Do I Do. Stevie was teaching it to the band. That record hadn't come out yet. So Stevie Wonder is the perfect one for that. They don't know what song he's gonna do from one song to the next, But that's the way his band is geared, and they know this is gonna be like that. Just like Prince's band is the same way. He's like, Rod Stewart's band, the musicians that you hire to play with you and the musicians that Michael have with him could do that. But that's not the type of show that Michael wants to do. He has a certain vision, which apparently is successful, not just from my lips, that he executes. Again, like I said, when I think about the different artists that I've worked with, Rod's attitude is, it's a party and we're the life of the party. And I love that. I love learning that from him. I love learning just to be that kind of relaxed and just kind of that organic flow. With Michael, it's about execution. But I also love that. I love to execute. There's a joy in bam, hitting those sharp lines and hitting that stuff and wowing people and like magic. It's like something that's not real. Michael likes that effect. The thing about Michael is you can take all those lights, you can take all of us off the stage. You just put Michael up there and put a light on him. Please, Michael is electric and exciting just in what he can physically do himself.
Absolutely. I agree.
Comes off as magic.
Darryl, obviously This Is It ended in a very tragic way, and it was a day for us, June 25th, I guess, that will always stay in our minds as being so tragic and a horrible day to move through. It must have been even more intense for you being so close to the production of This Is It and to Michael. What was that day like for you when you found out that Michael had passed away?
Well, first is disbelief, because there's so many rumors and stuff about Michael, you don't know what to believe. But one of the other singers had called me and told me. I was actually getting dressed to go to rehearsal. So I just remember saying, best thing, let me just get dressed to go. So I got there, and band and the dancers were sitting in one of the rooms where we eat. And the lights were all off, and they just had candles on. And well, as you can imagine, the mood was just somber. You gutted, just gutted. As time went on of working with Michael, your relationships get closer and more personal. I remember on this tour, and this may be a strange thing to say. On Michael's tours, it's like, if I wasn't there, it's not like anybody's going to leave the audience or not show up or not buy a ticket. I could be anybody, right? That's where I kind of felt. I said, I know, I can execute my things, but there are other people in Los Angeles and, around that can sing and can execute stuff, But I remember feeling for This Is It, after all of that stuff has happened, like you said, some stuff happened before history between history and This Is It, that long period. I just remember when I saw Michael, he gave me a hug, and just the way that he looked at me during rehearsals, that he would look over our way. There were a few of us who have been there through all of the tours. And you could see, not that Michael did not show appreciation for me for being on, of any of the things. I think it's just my own personal thing, But I just remember, first of all, just thinking, wow, I am so happy to be a part of this. And for the first time, I felt like I am helping Michael emotionally and psychologically by being one of the ones who's been there and got his back. I just remember that was my personal feeling about This Is It. It was all more personal for me, It's not that I worked any harder or any different. I just felt more supportive of Michael for This Is It.
How do you think that Michael Jackson should be remembered?
As a loving, giving individual, particularly loved children, obviously the most profound on stage entertainer of our time. I mean, that was his genius. I think a person that took the gift that he had, and if you think of like taking a washcloth that's wet and just wringing it until you get every drop out of it, that was Michael in the way he gave of himself as a performer.
Mm.
And I think that's why people loved him, because it was real. He loved giving. He loved people. He loved giving of himself to see people be entertained.
I love it. Thank you very much for those thoughts. I've got to ask you too, looking back on all those decades that you got to work with the King of Pop, what is your favorite memory of Michael Jackson?
Wow. Maybe it was when he hugged me, welcoming me to This Is It. Came over and gave me a hug, and some things are kind of funny to put into words because you kind of, it's kind of like you had Michael hugs you like a toddler would hug you, like real. Somebody can give you a Hollywood hug or a fake hug. No, but somebody. Yeah, I say a toddler because a toddler can come up and hug somebody that they don't know and give them just because they're full of love and innocence. So Michael's hug was just like until This Is It. I didn't really kind of realize or just kind of take it in that, well, maybe I am really special to Michael, because I thought, again, I could be in. It's not like anybody would have not bought a ticket or not showed up or walked out of the show of any Michael's concerts because I wasn't there, right? So, but I remember thinking, just like on my Facebook page, all these people are, chiming in and asking me. I'm like, well, why does people want to know? I'm trying to wrap my head around how these people feel about me, how Michael's fans feel about me, and the thing that made me connect with it was Robin Hood. As a kid, I love Robin Hood. I love, Sinbad the Sailor. But Robin Hood, what if I could have met Little John or Friar Tuck? Are you familiar with Robin Hood?
Of course,
Or
yeah.
the story
I
of
mean,
Robin Hood?
I do know the story. I'm most familiar with the Disney version. I used to love it when I was a kid.
Right. So I'm thinking, that's how I was able to wrap my head around, oh, okay. Well, hell yeah, man, I would love to meet Little John or Friar Tuck, like one of the merry men that were hanging out with Robin Hood. That's who I am to Michael's fans. I'm like one of the merry men. That kind of helps me like put it in perspective for myself,
I love those thoughts. A supporting character, but absolutely essential to the story. You've just got a way of answering questions that's so touching and real. Thank you, Darryl. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I had loving parents, man, and I grew up, my life is good, and please, I love people. And if you're not being honest, the person you're not being honest the most with is yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to fool myself. Shit.
What are you up to these days, and what's next for you in your career?
I'm working on a solo project right now. I have about 5 songs in various states of being finished. I'll wait till I finish to kind of decide on what the plan is for putting them out. Maybe I'll put out singles, or so hopefully in a couple of months, at least a single will be coming out.
Great.
I still get called for sessions, not as much as before, but I still get called for stuff.
Where can people find you online if they want to connect with you and see your latest work coming out and all that kind of stuff?
Okay, well, right now probably Facebook is the best for that. I know that's antiquated, but I'm ashamed to say I don't have a website right now, but I will have a website inside of 3 months, and I'll probably post about that on my Facebook page.
Cool. Okay. We will definitely point people to that direction in our show notes as well. And just as we wrap up, I'll definitely link people now to where people can find us. We are the MJCast, Michael Jackson podcast. You can find us at themjcast.com. We're also at the MJCast on all the different social networks, including Twitter and Threads and all the different ones. There's Instagram, heaps of them. You can email us at themjcast@icloud.com if you want to contact us. We would love to hear from our listeners. We always do. If you want to support the show, you can access our website. There's a little link up the top that says support, and you can click on that and donate. Even if you want to give us a couple of dollars or something, that always helps with show running costs. And we donate quite a bit to charity as well. So help keep the show going if you want to. That's totally optional and up to you. We also have a merch store, the mjcast.com/shop, where we sell t-shirts and all kinds of different things where you can support the MJcast and Michael Jackson all at the same time. That's totally up to you as a listener. We want to thank everybody so much for tuning into this episode. It's been amazing being able to hear from Darryl all about the ins and outs of working with the King of Pop for decades. His career, his live performance career, certainly wouldn't have been the same or as good without Darryl on the scene. Thank you so much, Darryl, for joining us on the MJcast. We deeply appreciate it.
Well, thank you for that. And what city in Australia are you actually calling from?
So I'm calling from Brisbane, the eastern coast of Australia. You will have been here at least twice.
Yeah. I went there with Rod Stewart as well. Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's a great place, great part of the world.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I scuba dived for the first time in Cork. In what is going out towards Cook's Island?
Yeah, so the Great Barrier Reef in northern Queensland.
Yeah. So
very, very cool.
We were in Brisbane. Yeah. I love the Gold Coast.
Oh, Gold Coast is it is great. That's south, just about an hour south of Brisbane. And
how far are you from Noosa Heads?
Noosa, that's about an hour and 20 minutes north. So that's actually the Sunshine Coast, which is where Noosa is. That's where my family's from, my parents. We go up there all the time and take the kids up to hang out with mum and dad. And
oh, very cool. All right.
Thank you again for coming on the MJcast. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jamon. And it was a pleasure, sharing things with you. Hope I didn't talk too much.
No, not at all.
I'm glad that Frasier got picked up again. There's a new version of Frasier out now.
I know, yeah. I haven't actually watched the new one yet because my wife and I were going back and watching all of the older episodes again.
Right.
We're huge, massive Frasier fans. And actually another co-host of the MJcast, one of the people I work with, Charlie Thompson, he is also a massive Frasier fan. So we have been very excited to talk with you because the song for that show, obviously you wrote it. There's got to be a story behind that.
Well, people ask me what, tossed salads and scrambled eggs mean. And basically they're a metaphor for crazy people's brains or people that, brains that are not working right.
Right.
So he's a talk show host. So he hears his blues. So his blues are these people calling in with their problems that he's trying to solve. And they're the tossed salads and scrambled eggs that are calling. And he seems confused, but he got them pegged, right? Because he's got to have that attitude. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Got to throw his hand up. They're calling again, So.
I love it.
in the first instance, it's about his, the people who are calling on the radio. But basically, he's a psychiatrist. It's just like a chiropractor, right? Nobody ever walks into the chiropractor and just gets a clean bill of health. Everybody's got something they need, some kind of adjustment, right? Just so to a psychiatrist, everybody got some kind of psychological problem. So we're all taught salads and scrambled eggs to Frasier, right?
Right.
To a psychiatrist, Oh my God, here they come again, right? What's this loony going to be talking about, right? How have I got to straighten them out, And of course, to take on the whole thing is, he's, what's the life of that psychiatrist like? That's the joke of the whole show.
Crazier than the
His
patients
foibles.
in a lot of cases.
Exactly.
When you recorded that and wrote it, did you, because obviously Kelsey Grammer is the one singing it in the show.
Right.
Were you there during when he had to record it as well?
No, I wasn't. I was probably working. Yeah, but I mean, he would have learned it from, like, when we did the demo, I sang it. So he would have learned it from me. But no, I wasn't there when he recorded it.
Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
Strangely, for the whole, I think 13 years maybe, I never went to a taping of the show because I was working all the time, right?
Yeah.
But this time when it got rebooted, I made it a point. I said, oh, hell, I'm going to, so I ended up going to the taping of the last show and then to the rap party for the first season. Yeah. And Kelsey is just surprisingly, he comes off erudite. Come on, he's like, I mean, he cried. He was talking to the audience and he's, like at the end of the taping of the show. I mean, he was talking, he just started crying. I mean, he's a really sensitive guy and a sweet guy. When I met him, it felt like he's my uncle or something,
Yeah, he's a nice
and
guy.
he was really, and really complimented me about the lyrics and some of the actors were saying that a part of their audition was they had to recite the lyrics to the song. I thought that was cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again.